So sometimes you don't want to do too much with your assets before you have a good feel. You know that your character's moving in the right speed and that there's the right distance to that. So literally this map shows you the different passes. You have a first prototype pass that uses just like basic mesh actors. It's not pretty, but it's playable. That's the most important part, is that you're play testing this part. At this point, it's like a 3D paper prototype. Then you want to make sure that everything has the kind of look that you want it to do, like that it's feasible, that you're replacing these brushes, these blocks, with actual geometry, and that it can look right. And this is when you can oftentimes do things like, I'm going to put a little podium right here, but what was there at one point was a big block, and I decided that podium should have a big block as a collision because that makes the flow work better. And then you start doing lighting. This is like when you bring in your technical artists to start placing lights, post-processing, and really make material shine. And then this polish pass is often called a beauty pass. It's where you start adding particles. Always do particles last. You'll get down to a hole with particles, and then you realize the mechanic doesn't work and the particles are pointless. Audio is very important, but audio really shouldn't be done until everything else can be tied to it in the end. So if I hit play on this, you actually start off with the base level. So these are just basic brushes, and you go through, and this is a temple example, and I just want to make sure it feels right. Okay, yes. This is the distance I want it to be. This is the feel. This turns right. Everything's good here. Okay, let's move on. The next phase. All right, so this is when we start having the accurate meshes. So the columns are in, the statue is in. There's no sound yet, no particles, right? These are little things that will have particles at one point, but we're just seeing if that's the right size. Right? Still saving your time from doing too much tedious work with finessing stuff. Right? I can even see the, hey, what's up over there? Hey, and then go back over. And then I can navigate to the next one. And now we start putting in some of these elements, right? So simple particles, simple lighting. The whole thing's overblown. I don't know why that setting's like that. And it starts looking a little nicer. And in this way, they're not doing any redundant work. They're just modifying the already existing geometry and materials, so it looks good. And then the final one, you'll start hearing sound. Right, spatialized, and all the materials are in there. They have specular highlights. They have all their things. So this is kind of like the idea to have in your mind is iterative. Don't just build everything from like the left side to the right side. Build the whole thing, build it over again, build it over again. Just the mindset's worth going over. That's a thing. Okay. Now, the other thing we're going to do is go into what it's called a Sprite Sheet. Has anyone ever heard of a Sprite Sheet or a texture atlas? Yeah, what do you
use those in Minecraft?
So there's two different. What I'm asking are actually two different questions. A Sprite Sheet and Texture Atlas are two different things. A texture atlas is a Sprite Sheet actually is a texture atlas. So sometimes it's more performative to have every texture on one PNG or one JPEG. Every texture, if you're doing a bunch like a Mario or you're doing something that's really small, a texture atlas will have. You'll just sub-UV out every single component, and it'll all be on that one texture. You have one image in your entire scene. So that's like a texture atlas. Like this. This is putting all the textures that are needed for a certain area or whatever on one image, and it's so much more small in memory than to have 1,000 of these things. If you have 1,000 small things, put them onto one. And it's much more of an older idea because we now have like giant game engines with gigabytes worth of stuff, but like that's all the textures for an entire city on one image. Right? It's way more performative this way. And when you start doing level of detail optimization, if you have like a texture per window and a texture per whatever, it'll automatically create these for you because these are the optimal way for actually rendering. When you start doing things like far away, if you don't need that high of a resolution, if you have a bunch of things, stitch them together. These are some of these performative kind of methodologies. But A certain kind of texture atlas is called a sprite sheet. And a sprite is something as simple as Mario. Mario is considered a sprite. And every single position Mario's doing is all in a row, right? And again, it's a way of doing an entire character. All of Mario is on one JPEG. All of Mario, including when he's a fireball throwing guy, when he's a whatever, they're all in one image. And you can imagine how that makes things more performative than having to search through a ton of just tiny PNGs, right? So we do this a lot with motion graphics, especially with After Effects. If we go to like what's a stock video site, like we'll just do a UI, animated UI HUD, heads up display, and we'll see some like cool stuff, right? This kind of cool stuff. So you can find a lot of these things on Shutterstock. That's a big one, right? And you see that some of them actually already come as kind of sprite sheets and stuff like that. That's kind of cool. But no, these are really what I want. Let's see if I already went ahead and did this once last week. Let's use my downloads. Fractals, is that it? Nope. That's my 360. Steps. I know what I'll do. I'll put After Effects. After Effects is the tool I'm going to use for this, for motion graphics. Stock footage. That's totally what I want. Something like this. So this is the idea. Something that's very simple information that we're going to turn into a material inside the game engine. I'm going to go ahead and try it. It's MP4. And I'm going to bring it into After Effects. I don't want to drop into you. Cool. Go away. Let's give After Effects a 10. It tries hard. Alright. So bring it from my downloads. And this is about basically creating a Png sequence. Right? Right now it's 4K. I know that there's a limitation for only doing 8K for my entire texture. So I'm gonna down res this considerably. I'm gonna make it needs to be probably we'll do 256 by 256 and see how it goes. I'll keep it pretty small. And it is it's 25 frames per second. It's basically 10 seconds long. 10 seconds long. I'm gonna bring it in, and there it kind of just fits. I can bring it down a little bit. You can S the scale, make it all fit in. Pretty close. Great. Now it all fits in. And I'm going to see if it starts repeating itself. It seems to repeat itself every 2 seconds. I could probably make it loop and get rid of even more information. Again, this is all about being optimized. I'm going to go ahead and cheat and just make it 2 seconds. Control K brings up my composition settings. I teach another class in After Effects, that's why it's like my memory. All right, so this may or may not loop. It's good enough. No one could tell, right? So I've reduced the amount of frames this is, and I'm going to render it out to a sequence. Png sequence sounds good to me. Export, add it to render queue, and instead of being AVI, I'm going to put this in my downloads, or I'm going to put this in my project, which is here, imports, Sprite Sheet. How'd it go?
It was okay.
All right. We're going to call this HUD. And then I'm going to make it exactly a PNG sequence. And I don't think it has an alpha, so I could have utilized an alpha if I wanted to. And we're going to render it out to that folder. Alright, so render. Yay! So I'm going to use this program, so I now have a bunch of individual images, and I want to make them into rows and columns. And there's a piece of software that can do some free ones if it's small enough, called Texture Packer, and it's on both Mac and Windows. I already have it installed, but I'll add this to the Documents and Demos folder so you can download, install, and play with it if you need to use this methodology. So for you, like your static is only like 5 different images over and over and over again, and you don't need a whole video file that's playing it, kind of idea. So, and this is another way of locking in content with your game engine clock. So, Texture Packer, free version. We like free things. I already made one, but we'll make a new one. So we'll say, let's say, new project. No. I could then figure this one out. Are we going to add sprites? Okay. So here we go. We're going to add sprites. This is basically the same thing. This is the one I did before. So let's add it all in. We'll say OK. And just fit it into kind of a sheet. Doesn't seem to be really nice, but I want to choose my data format. We're going to make it just a PNG. Figuring this out on the fly. It doesn't need any data. We're just making a PNG 32. And then the max size can be 4096. And now it's all on one image. So everything is a texture atlas, and you'd read it across. Okay? So let me go ahead and I'm assuming publish means to make it. So we'll call this sheet 02. Doing it. So let's go over to this map's fine. Go into textures and we'll bring it in. It's in here, Sprite Sheet. There we go. Here we go. So here it is inside the engine, and let's go ahead and make a material out of it. Material M hood heads-up display, like something that would be inside your reticule or something. Open it up. And let's find that texture and throw it in. And as you would expect, though, when you bring it in, it is just the image. It is just all those different tiny little things, right? What we need to do is use a thing called flipbook. Just like you would do a paper flipbook. That's all we're making is a paper flipbook out of these things. TUVs, and we need to tell it how many rows and how many columns. So we're going to give it a constant, and we count that the image has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 8 by 15. 8 by 15. I'm a little bit off, but you can start seeing it doing the thing. Let's see what it could be. Was it 16? I'll have to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's too hard to do. Let's do it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's 15. 8 by 15. Oh, because I'm being silly, it's 15 by 8. I have them mixed up. There's a difference between columns and rows. Anyway. Now look what we got. We have a little animation from our little sprite sheet. Cool? The black is not an alpha, but we can turn it into our, we can go change this to a masked material. And just take the black channel out and put it in that opacity mask. And this is how you make UIs inside of video games. Super lightweight, one image, and it's just sub UVing it, like this UVs, these UVs, these UVs, over and over and over again. Then I can, go over here to put a cylinder. Right, this is our coffee mug. We want you to drink the Kool-Aid in our game, and we can indicate that by putting a plane around it, and then adding that material to the plane. So this is how like almost all graphics for controllers are. You have these things fly off onto different planes. All the things in Tilt Brush are flipping around are different planes with different kind of sprite sheets on it. Right? Super lightweight to render, easier to deal with than even a video. So anyway, that's just a cool thing I wanted to show you guys because I use it a lot.
Is there a way to set the frames per second on that? Or
Yeah, totally. Obviously, you can mess around with it before you put it in the engine, but that's just your animation phase. This 0 to 1 number is the speed, essentially. I could imagine that it would get choppy, right, if it goes too slow, but you definitely make it go faster, and of course that could be animated on the fly if you wanted to. And then when it comes to opacity mask, there's a little feature for like how dark does it have to be black. Like this is not really all that black. That's the opacity mask clipping level. I could change how much, how dark it has to be to clip. All right, so that clips off a whole lot more. Or that's the same thing as using a shader and saying the power, I square root it to the 2, and it makes it higher contrast. Anyway, so that's that for now. Was there anything else on here? That was quick. Well, I mean, we have it all together. Let me just go back and show the raycasting real quick to show that it works, since that was kind of funky last week. While we're here, and that was the VR map 01. No, that's this one. That was the Untitled. Here was our pawn, and we were shooting things, right? No, it's still in the center of the room. I can still shoot it. And the sound works now. So that just means I messed up the pawn. Let's just see. Debugging always. The motion controller is on the VR root. And motion controller right is, oops, on the VR root. Controller right is the right and left is the left. Default scene root. Huh. And we're getting it from the location. Going off, forward vector. We're doing it. I'll never figure it out. Anyway, at least the sound's working this time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. We know how to do sprite sheets.